Now let's start the show.
December 7th, 1941, which was 68 years ago, the Japanese attacked the island of Oahu and the Navy Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. It was a day that Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared a date which will live in infamy. 22 planes were destroyed, 22 ships were destroyed, 188 planes were lost, and the lives of 2,403 soldiers were lost that day, including 1,177 men who are still entombed inside the USS Arizona.
Keep in mind the effectiveness of the attack made it that these planes that were destroyed, most of them didn't even take off the ground.
None of them were off the ground.
None of them were off the ground, which states that this is the most successful sneak attack ever done by the enemy,
And
or
also-
any Navy, by that matter, in the entire world.
Anything in the world. What this did, it was a very horrific attack on the United States, and it dragged us into World War II, and it was something that we were trying to avoid because we wanted to keep Europe, we wanted to stay out of European affairs.
Exactly.
And now that months earlier that Japan had signed an agreement with Nazi Germany, becoming superpowers at that time. After the attack, the Japanese had declared a war on the United States and Great Britain.
Yeah, let's close more about that. Like, why the Japanese decided to go to war with us in the first place? Why did they decide to attack us in the first place?
I don't really think there was I don't know what the explanation was exactly, but we were at peace. We were almost at peace with that nation in Japan.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But when they signed the agreement with Nazi Germany, they basically they became our enemy. It was very horrible to even recall it. And also another thing is, it was released in the Associated Press. A man who was 86, who was a retired Oregon firefighter, 86 years old. His son lives in Maui.
Yeah.
He just came back today. For the first time, he visited the Pearl Harbor and remember the attack even 68 years ago. It's just amazing. Something like this will never, ever leave the hearts of anybody.
That's true.
Right now, I am going to play you the declaration of war that was given to Congress and was broadcasted live through the air on December 8th, 1941. Franklin Delano Roosevelt spoke to Congress as well as the nation, declaring war on the Empire of Japan.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation. And at the proliferation of Japan was still in combination with its government and its emperor, looking for the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Indeed, 1 hour after Japanese air squadrons had commenced bombing in the American island of Oahu, the Japanese ambassador to the United States and to his colleagues delivered to our Secretary of State a formal reply to a written American message. And there this reply stated that it seemed useless to continue the existing diplomatic negotiations, which contained no threat or hint of war or of armed attack. It will be reported that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. During the intervening time, the Japanese government yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Root Island. And this morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. Japan has therefore undertaken a surprise offensive extending throughout the Pacific area. The facts of yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinion and will understand the implications for the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. But always, with our whole nation, remember the character of the onslaught against us.
Coming up now is probably one of my most favorite parts of the speech.
No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. I believe that I interpret the will of the Congress and of the people when I assert that we will not only defend ourselves to the uttermost, but will make it very certain that this form of treachery shall never again endanger us. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph so help us God. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Wow, what a very powerful speech that,
Oh, yes.
that happened that day on December 8th, 1941 in the Kennedy Center in the Capitol building.
I want to say, So I'm trying to figure out what came first, Normandy or Japan. Now I realize Japan came first, right?
Japan came. The Pearl Harbor attack came first, and
D-Day Normandy. That was
the Normandy
1944.
beaches. June 6, 1944, was the day of D-Day. Probably one of the Americans' most greatest invasions of a German-occupied country in the history of war.
And the war didn't really end until 1945.
The war didn't really end until 1946, actually.
Oh, yeah, I
but
forgot.
September 2nd, 1945, on the deck of the USS Missouri is where Douglas MacArthur and the Admiral and the Emperor of Japan signed the treaties of peace and the surrender of the Japanese Empire. That day officially ended World War II, but it didn't really end until 1946 because there was still a little bit of civil unrest between some of the recovering nations, including the hunting of the Nazis.
That's
a lot of the Nazis escaped, and they were hunted. 3,000 of them were tried, and only about 100 or less were convicted and hanged. The others were sentenced to life in prison, and some of the other ones got away scot-free.
Until some time ago, in which there's been reports, I think last week, of a German officer that claimed to be a Soviet POW forced to work for the Nazi Germany, and he was responsible for the deaths of about 250,000 Jews.
So basically, years later.
Yeah, so it's still an atrocity to still be reckoned with, especially in today's times, because in still today's times, if anyone were actually convicted of having any involvement with the Nazis, you're officially an enemy of the world.
It still even burns to this day that even 68 years later, you have survivors who are going to the memorial in Pearl Harbor, the Pearl as the locals call it, and to see the USS Arizona Memorial, and you can still see these 70 plus and 80-year-old plus men still crying. You know what? That is never going to leave anybody. I know I wasn't around for it, but we kind of connect with that generation because we know what they went through. We're going through it ourselves because we're overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda.
More or less, yeah, you're right.
5,000 of our troops are coming home in body bags, and the rest of them are coming home without limbs.
That's true. And the Afghanistan plan that Obama had about a week ago, kind of now, although maybe a little too late, actually finally gave him the opportunity to say that we can actually do things right.
We can do things right, yeah.
But
we can start bringing them home. That better happen.
That's not really much said, but that's pretty much that's the effect part of the cause. The cause he wants to try to make these soldiers come home early is with the assistance of them in Afghanistan. His original plan, if you've seen the speeches that he gave out in West Point, New York, was to finally move most of the troops, if not all of them, from Iraq to Afghanistan. But not immediately. They're going to get some time off, at least to recollect themselves. They say they'll ship out no later than March of 2010, which I'd say is a little too late, but still could have an effective measure because, you know, the Iraq War, what a smoking mirror, really. I can see the Iraq War is a complete smoking mirror, and we always say about getting the terrorists, yet we only
we only scratched the surface.
Yeah, and then we didn't really go actually get involved into getting Osama bin Laden. I mean, he can be anywhere right now.
He could be dead.
They say yeah, he can be dead, but we don't know about that yet until I actually get more proof, which we didn't really have enough resources to do because we wasted all our resources. We directed it all the way to Iraq, and that was the worst thing we could ever have done. It wasted a lot. It wasted a lot of resources, a lot of lives, a lot of everything, money. The debt we're in right now is because of the Iraq War, which really, I mean, we can't even justify just because we captured Saddam Hussein. That's not. That leaves no.
Doesn't solve our problems. No.
It doesn't. It just made. It just. I don't know. There's no way of saying. It's like pretty much you're gonna do a project, and yet you scored a friggin' 85 on a class that has pretty much no meaning into your career. So it's like a really useless thing at this point because. Even with Saddam, there was order in Iraq. I'm not saying that he should stay in power if he was still alive, but we didn't do any better. We really didn't. They hate us for it now. So we should at least try to make them establish their own democracy on their own, if it will be democracy for them. Depends what works.
If we can get the hell out of there first and then let them settle their own differences.
And that's what he's trying to do. What I find conflicting with Obama's plan is how he can say that we can try to resolve the Afghanistan situation and bring all the troops back home by the summer of 2011. I say it's too soon.
I think it's a little bit too soon. It's, as well. I agree with you.
Because
right
you lose a gap of like effort and progress because you're in Iraq, and then you can't just fast forward everything just to find Osama bin Laden like that. It's not that complicated. It's not that easy. I mean, it has been easy for us anyways because he keeps moving from place to place. We don't know if he's dead or alive. So,
yeah.
What I only find conflicting with Obama's resolution is how he makes it so soon. I mean, I don't know. Any man can't really keep a promise like that. So I don't know what's under his sleeve.
But I really think what he's trying to do is he's trying to end what Bush started.
He is, and I give him complete and absolute respect for that. It's just, I mean, if you look at both sides of the situation, it's some people can call it irresponsible because they at least know that their son or daughter, husband or wife, mother or father is out there right now. It doesn't. They gotta show some respect to make them think that they don't expect Obama to like rush them.
It's absolutely. Yeah.
And now we have a new growing problem with psychological problems ever since that massacre at Fort Hood, I believe it was.
Fort Hood. It was the Hassan, I believe.
Hassan, medical officer for the army there, went out and shot about 10, 13 people.
I think it was 14 people he killed.
14 people, yeah. 14. And he was declared unedged, although no one really saw any, sought help from him.
Insanity,
exactly.
Insanity at the trial, yeah.
And still, even if that was false or not, I mean, that does happen to a lot of soldiers. They get really unedged. I mean, shell shock really hits home for them in their hearts, and they can't, and especially in their heads, so they can't really, function as normally as you would like them to.
Absolutely.
Because they dealt with so much traumatic stuff, overseas in Iraq, and the same thing with any war in the past, Vietnam, World War II. So it can't really be said that you can't just expect them to come back and their brains and their personality isn't shattered. I mean, you lose something when you're at war, no matter what.
You can lose your mind, your insanity, your
exactly.
psyche. You can even lose your life.
So that unless he has, a real top-notch team in Army intelligence, I really don't see how he can clean up everything by 2011, much less give them their own fully functional government.
And in 2011, he's going to have to start preparing for another campaign. By 2012, by starting 2011,
exactly.
He's
so pretty much
campaign.
Exactly. So pretty much, like, the only thing I see Obama really trying to solve, if he really wants to stay in a second term, is that what he still wants to do? Because maybe
I know
down
he'll get a second term.
It
depends on who's running too.
No,
McCain is not going to.
It still depends on what. It still depends on what you and what he really wants. Because maybe at the end of all this, maybe he's seen some error in his ways, or seen that maybe he made a mistake here and there, and maybe he don't want to run for second term. Depends on him. Actually, he's the only guy I can trust that if he knows he's not doing a good job, he won't run for a second term. Unless he knows he has a trick
what he believes in, yeah.
Or at least he has a trick up his sleeve, then yeah, and he'll definitely go for a second term. But I think he's the only president I can trust and that actually, he'll believe whether or not he deserves a second term. And if he doesn't, he won't run again.
He won't run again.
And that's just me, but I just think maybe the guy will know what he has to do.
He'll know what he has to do.
So at least if he does do bad as a president, then he has the self-respect to punch out early or punch out by the end of the first term. But the key things that really get him right now is the war on terror, healthcare reform, and the economy, pretty much.
The economy.
If he can fix all three things, he pretty much has the dominant leeway for a second term and win.
Yeah. Back to what we were discussing before about the Pearl Harbor incident, which marks the 60th anniversary today. I just pulled up an article written by Lana O'Connor from the Palm Beach Post.
Mm-hmm.
It says this. I'm gonna read it to you guys, and I was just reading it to myself while we were discussing this, parts of it anyway. It was really, really emotional. Even I'm reading it, and I'm still being caught on by it. It's called Pearl Harbor Vets Recall Infamous Day at Boynton Beach Ceremony. Boynton Beach. After 68 years, memories of the Pearl Harbor attacks start up an old tremor in Harold Shore's hands. On December 7, 1941, after the Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor, propelling the United States into World War II, Shore was in a small boat searching for bodies in the harbor. I saw a head popping out of the water, said Shore, who's 84 years old, lives west of Boynton Beach. I picked up the guy and put him on the pier. To this day, I still don't know what happened to him. His wife Florence, watching him intently as he spoke, raised her hand on guard at the point where memory could give way to a nightmare. I think we'll stop right there, she says. Shore would have gone on, but she has seen how much it troubles him to retell the story. That is, some things just do not get easier. No matter how many years have passed, the day of chaos and tragedy had the same immediacy for those who were there. For them, it is as if time had not passed. Like they're getting older, but they're still trapped in that same year and still envisioning the day of this very tragic event.
It still makes sense because it's still some things, like you said, won't leave you at all.
You can't heal wounds like this at all. If I was in the Navy and I saw one of my own brothers die right in front of me, I wouldn't be able to torment it. I wouldn't be able to live with it. I'll be able to live my life, but that memory is still burnt in the back of your head for the rest of your life.
That's true. That's true.
How more messed up do things have to get before things happen? Like, things get worse.
Yeah.
How can it happen?
And it's really hard because at least they know that they won a victory in that war, but still doesn't matter what you gain from it positively. It's still your comrades that die in battle, and it's still a traumatizing thing.
One of the I was watching this documentary like a couple months ago. It was Tora, 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 the real story of Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Tora, 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 by the way, was a really popular movie back in the 70s. It was rated G for all audiences. What Tora, Tora, Tora translates in Japanese is Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. That was the code sent by the ship to the 350 fleet planes that signaled the surprise attack is a success. Do what you got to do, basically. And in 1995, it was the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II, mm-hmm. and the government invited back many of the Japanese veterans and their families to visit the memorial at Pearl Harbor and the island of Oahu. For many of the soldiers, it was a time to heal old wounds for the Americans and the Japanese, and for some of the other American soldiers, it was very difficult because they couldn't raise a hand to not even say hi because the memories were just too bitter. Mm-hmm. But there was this one person who passed away in 2004, by the way, rest in peace. His name was Richard Fisk. Even 50-something years later, he came face to face with Takeshi Maeda. Richard Fisk came face to face with Takeshi Maeda, is his name. He was the pilot who bombed his ship, the USS West Virginia. The Japanese pilot who probably is, I don't know if he's still alive yet, but see if he's still alive, but he said, Mr. Fisk suddenly hugged me. I reached out my hand, but he hugged me with both his arms. He said, he must have been about a few inches taller than me. And I said, with tears in my eyes, I said to him, I am sorry for sinking your ship. And he said, no, don't be sorry, because this was a war between two nations, and nothing could have prevented us from entering this deadly attack. And I think...
That's true.
I think it was really... I started to tear up because it was... How would you feel if you came face to face with a man who was responsible for killing many of your brothers and shipmates? But a lot of the veterans said, look, if I'm going to live a normal life, I have to learn to forgive and forget.
That is true, and that is very hard.
It's definitely hard, but a lot of people find a way to live with themselves, even though the responsibility of somebody, you killed a lot of my friends, but I forgive you because it wasn't your fault. It was because your government wanted to get involved with our business, and we wanted no part of it. And I think that's a way for people to understand and forgive and forget. I would certainly forgive someone for doing something like that. It would take me years to get over, but if I would come face to face with you, like maybe decades later, I would forgive in order to live with myself. I would have to learn to forgive and forget. If I want to live a normal life, you can't live a normal life if you're full of hate.
That's true.
If you're a forgiving person like me, I will forgive you for something that occurred years ago. Look, it's in the past. We're older now. We're mature. We're getting on with our lives. We have families. We got to learn to forgive and forget. Let's be friends.
That's true.
That's another thing. Oh, man. It's still emotional to even talk about because you feel for a lot of these guys.
Oh, yeah.
And the oldest, there were a lot of heroes there that were born on that day. Dory Miller is one of those men, an African-American cook. The Navy was segregated during that time. He is credited with shooting down multiple Japanese airplanes. He was awarded the Navy Cross.
Yes, he was.
In 1944, he died while serving on a ship out in the Pacific. And they also issued numerous medals of honor that day. I mean, like weeks and days after the attack, to people who served. One of the only surviving members of that fraternity of Medal of Honor winners that day is Johnny Finn, who just recently turned 100 years old. God bless him, man. And he was with his wife that night, and he woke up to the sounds of just guns and everything else.
Guns blazing and bombs going off.
Yeah. Lieutenant John William Finn, born July 23rd, 1909. Retired officer of the United States Navy who received the Medal of Honor in recognition of heroism and distinguished service during the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor. At age 100, he's the oldest living Medal of Honor recipient and is the only living Pearl Harbor Medal of Honor recipient today. He served from 1926 to 56 in the United States Navy, and I think he's probably one of the greatest heroes of our time. He's gotten decorations. He's gotten the Medal of Honor, Purple Heart, Navy Good Conduct Medal with 2 Bronze Stars, American Defense Service Medal, American Campaign Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, World War II Victory Medal, and Navy Occupation Service Medal. That is the definition of an American hero. I can't believe it, man.
And he's still alive to remember, just how important it was that he even received those medals to begin with. Because I think at that time, you don't really expect to get medals. You're just trying to know how you're going to cope with this. And you get a mail from the government saying, we want to recognize your service and your heroism, so please come by to accept these medals. And it still doesn't really, it wouldn't really faze them,
No, this is his Medal of Honor citation that was given to him when he was honored the day he was honored for the Medal of Honor. For extraordinary heroism, distinguished service, and devotion above and beyond the call of duty during the first attack by the Japanese airplanes on the Naval Air Station Kanahio Bay on 7 December 1941. Lieutenant Finn promptly secured and manned a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on an instruction stand in a completely exposed section of parking ramp, which was under heavy enemy machine gun strafing fire. Although painfully wounded many times, he continued to man his gun and return to the enemy's fire vigorously with telling effect throughout the enemy's strafing and bombing attacks with complete disregard for his own personal safety. It was only by specific orders that he was persuaded to leave his post to seek medical attention. Following first aid treatment, although obviously suffering from pain and moving with great difficulty, he returned to the squadron area and actively supervised the rearming of returning planes. His extraordinary heroism and conduct in this action were keeping the highest traditions of the United States Navy. Wow, what do you call that? That is absolute. And also, in the 2009 interview, he said this. When he was called a hero, he said this in the 2009 Hero. That damned hero stuff is a bunch of crap, I guess. Well, it is one thing that I think any man that is in that, you got to be in that position, he said. You got to understand that there's all kinds of heroes, but they never get a chance to be in a hero's position. You know what? I kind of agree with that too.
Oh yeah.
Look, you're only remembered for so much, but no one will forget what these people did and tried to do.
Of course. Makes a lot of sense, and it makes it really puts more metal on those who've fallen. So at least they're respected more than those who are still left alive.
Yep. Dory Miller who's the African American. He was a cook in the United States Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Attacking Pearl Harbor, he was the first African American to be awarded the Navy Cross. That's the third highest honor awarded by the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
After the Medal of Honor and the Navy Distinguished Service Medal. Today, the Navy Cross precedes the Distinguished Service Medal. The Navy Cross is now the second highest thing in the Navy that you can receive. You know, and he was killed in 1943. Correct that. In 1943. Granite Marker, he was MIA. So like he was presumed dead, but we'll never know what really happened now.
Exactly.
And another, what I want to point out about this, I'll find it right now. He shot down many planes. He used a Browning 50 caliber anti-aircraft gun. And he slowly settled in the harbor, including abandoned ship. He abandoned ship. Miller was commended with the Secretary of Navy, commended by Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox on April 1st, 1942, and on May 27, 1942, he received the Navy Cross, which Fleet Admiral, then Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, gave him the cross on the USS Enterprise. And I think he was also given a posthumous award as well. The USS Miller, Knox First Class, was commissioned on June 30th in his honor in 1973. It was a battleship named after him. What an honor that is to have a ship named after you.
Yep.
He was also on, in 2002, he was also on Melfi Keith Asante's list of 100 greatest African Americans. Wow. He's also got a lot of schools, YMCA programs, elementary schools, community centers, and posts and chapters named after him as well. He's got a sorority in his name as well. And wow.
Oh yeah. Already a great man in the time when their race was even recognized.
And I think he was played by Elvin Havard in the 70 film Tora, and portrayed by Cuba Gooding Jr.
In Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. And I think when he died, he was awarded another award posthumously, I believe, as well. And an African American man, he's a hero in itself.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. You gotta honor people like that, no matter what the color of their skin are.
Exactly.
I think if someone was to recognize this, like maybe a future president, maybe posthumously, due to the fact that he was an African American and the Navy was segregated. And another thing, maybe a president will issue him and his family, who is still alive, the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor. Of course, I would. You know what? If I was, I would definitely give him that award because, due to the fact that he was a black man in a segregated post in a segregated Navy back in the day, and he leaves his post and he goes to man a machine gun and shoot down several Japanese planes. You definitely have to be honored by that.
Of course.
Definitely.
He could have gotten killed, but he managed to stay.
He managed to do whatever he could to.
Oh yeah.
Well, we're almost done with the show. We have about 5 minutes left to go. Edgar, any closing statements that you want to add?
Nothing more, just remembering the
event.
Yeah, just honoring those who've fallen, and of course make sure that whatever happens in the future, we just manage to avoid warfare in all its forms.
I have a closing note that I want to say. We want to dedicate this to the lives lost on that day. And we also want to honor the heroes and the survivors of the Pearl Harbor attack, and to all the World War II veterans on our soil and abroad who served their countries. Even if you were an enemy or a friend, we honor you as much as we can. And you know, this day shouldn't have happened without warning. But on this day, December 7th, 1941, Franklin Delano Roosevelt declared this a day which will live in infamy. And it certainly is. Even 68 years later, America is still feeling the emotion and the loss suffered by so many. And we will never forget the 1,177 men who still lie entombed in the USS Arizona. Our memories go out to, our love and support and honor goes out to all the veterans and all the survivors, including the dead of World War II. Thank you for joining us. I'm DJ Feelgood.
Thank you.
We thank you for tuning in, and we wish you a very safe and happy holidays. Thank you very much, guys.
Good night.
Good night. Kick ass. I think it was really good. I think a lot of people will get a kick ass.
Oh yeah.
We just finished a show on today is December 7th, 1941, the 60th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack by the Japanese Empire. This date that FDR declared a date which will live in infamy still resonates even 68 years later. We would like to honor those who served this country and even the people who are serving this country now. We honor you and we love you very much, and have a happy holidays to everyone. Right, bud.